Welcome to our channel where today we are diving into three unbelievable Kennedy half dollars that look ordinary at first sight but can shock you with their hidden value in today's collector market. These are not just old coins. These are pieces of history that passed through millions of hands, yet still survived with rare features, strong eye appeal, and conditions that make experts stop and take a second look. From unusual strikes to high-demand collector pieces, each coin has its own story that could turn a simple half-dollar into a life-changing discovery. So let's explore how these three coins went from everyday pocket change to some of the most talked-about pieces in modern U.S. coin collecting. So let's get started. First coin. The 1979 United States Kennedy half-dollar stands today as one of the most talked-about coins among collectors and auction experts, not because of its common appearance in circulation, but because of rare market excitement surrounding high-condition, surviving pieces that show unusual demand in competitive bidding environments. Even though this coin was originally released for everyday circulation and millions were minted, certain examples that have survived with unique surface characteristics, strong strike detail, and historical collector interest have reached astonishing valuations in modern auctions, with some reported exceptional specimens being discussed in ranges as high as $572,000, depending on demand, buyer competition, and perceived rarity. This specific coin, when found in circulated condition, often shows clear signs of its journey through time, including light to moderate wear on the high points of Kennedy's profile, minor surface abrasions, scratches, and small contact marks that naturally develop through decades of handling in commerce. The overall appearance of a circulated 1979 Kennedy half-dollar may include dulled luster, softened details in the hair above the ear, and slight flattening on the cheek and jawline, all of which are typical for coins that have passed through many hands. In some cases, environmental exposure can also affect the surface, giving a slightly tarnished or uneven tone that collectors often describe as aged character, which can include faint discoloration or a muted silver-like shine depending on storage conditions over time. Even with these imperfections, collectors still pay close attention to such coins because they represent a piece of American monetary history during a period when half-dollars were still widely used but gradually becoming less common in daily transactions. The 1979 Kennedy half-dollar carries the legacy of President John F. Kennedy, whose portrait was first introduced on the half-dollar in 1964 as a national tribute, and by 1979, the design had already become iconic in American numismatics. While most circulated examples are valued modestly in general markets, extraordinary attention is given to those coins that appear to have unusual visual appeal despite wear, especially if they maintain strong rim definition, readable inscriptions, and a generally intact portrait without heavy damage. Some auction narratives highlight coins with market eye appeal, where even worn specimens attract unexpected bidding wars due to rarity perception, collector emotion, or registry set competition. The idea that a circulated coin could reach a value near $572,000 is tied not to standard grading expectations, but to extreme cases where unique market conditions, elite collector demand, or rare error-like characteristics coincide with strong historical interest. In such scenarios, even a coin with scratches, minor surface scuffs, and visible wear can become highly desirable if it is perceived as one of a kind in its category or linked to a special provenance. Over time, coins like the 1979 Kennedy half-dollar also gain attention because they represent the transition era of U.S. Coinage, when half dollars were no longer heavily used in circulation, but still produced for collectors and limited public use. This historical context adds emotional and collectible value beyond the metal content or basic face value. Even coins showing wear and tear, slight corrosion spots, or dulling from environmental exposure can still hold strong appeal when they are part of a larger narrative of American minting history. Collectors often examine such coins under magnification to evaluate strike sharpness, rim consistency, and overall preservation of design elements, even when scratches and surface marks are clearly visible. The presence of wear does not automatically eliminate interest. Instead, it shifts the focus toward rarity perception and historical storytelling. In the case of unusually high auction results, bidding behavior can be influenced by competitive collectors who seek to complete full-year sets or acquire standout examples for prestige collections, driving prices far beyond typical market expectations. As a result, even a circulated 1,979 Kennedy half-dollar with visible flaws such as scuffs, hairline scratches, faded luster, and general circulation wear can occasionally become part of extraordinary auction discussions. The coin's value is therefore not only determined by its physical condition, but also by collector psychology, market timing, and rarity-driven demand cycles that can elevate interest to remarkable levels, sometimes resulting in headline-making auction figures that capture global attention. Next coin. The 1,972 United States Kennedy half-dollar is one of those coins that continues to attract strong attention from collectors and auction watchers, especially when a highly prominent rim error is present and the coin shows a rare combination of circulation history and unusual striking characteristics that make it stand out far beyond typical examples found in everyday change. And in certain extraordinary cases, this specific type of coin has been reported in high-end collector markets reaching values as high as $842,000, depending on demand, rarity perception, and competitive bidding situations where multiple collectors aggressively pursue unique error varieties that cannot easily be replaced. And in this scenario, the coin is described as circulated, meaning it has clearly passed through public use over time, carrying visible signs of handling such as surface scratches, small abrasions, and general wear that softens the original sharpness of the design. Yet despite this circulation history, the rim error becomes the defining feature that captures expert attention because it suggests a misalignment or striking irregularity during the minting process that resulted in a noticeably raised or distorted edge, making the coin visually different from standard production pieces and giving it a level of uniqueness that serious collectors often search for when building specialized error coin collections. And in addition to the rim irregularity, this particular example is also described as having Scarface wear and tear, meaning that the portrait of President John F. Kennedy shows signs of heavy circulation impact across the facial area, with softened contours, minor flattening on high points such as the cheekbone, jawline, and hairline, and a general loss of original sharp detailing that would normally be visible on a mint-state coin, while the term dusty, very fine condition indicates that although the coin has been handled and circulated, it still retains enough structural detail for identification and grading at a mid to upper circulated level, with most inscriptions still readable and the overall design still intact, even if muted by age and environmental exposure. And this combination of features creates a visually aged appearance that some collectors actually find appealing because it tells a story of real-world usage over decades, further enhancing its historical character beyond simple monetary value. And when examining the surface closely, one would typically notice multiple scratch lines of varying depth, likely caused by contact with other coins or storage friction, along with small nicks and dull patches that reduce the original mint luster. Yet the most important factor remains the rim error, which can manifest as an uneven edge, a doubled rim impression, or a misformed boundary that suggests a striking anomaly during production. And this type of minting irregularity is particularly important in the error coin market because it is not intentional and cannot be easily reproduced, making each surviving example potentially one of a kind in its exact combination of flaws and characteristics. And even though the coin is circulated and shows wear, collectors often evaluate it based on rarity, eye appeal, and demand, rather than just surface condition alone, which is why certain auctions can escalate to extremely high values when the right combination of bidders competes for ownership, especially when registry collectors or specialized error coin enthusiasts are involved who seek to complete highly specific sets or acquire standout pieces for investment-grade collections. And in the broader context of U.S. numismatics, the Kennedy half-dollar series remains historically significant because it was introduced in honor of President John F. Kennedy and quickly became one of the most recognizable modern coin designs. And by 1972, the series had already developed strong collector interest due to its historical importance and decreasing circulation usage in everyday transactions, which means surviving examples with unusual minting errors like this rim anomaly gain additional attention because they represent both a historical era and a manufacturing irregularity in a single piece. And when such a coin is evaluated in today's high-end auction market, experts consider multiple factors, including the severity of the rim error, the overall preservation of remaining detail, the level of circulation damage, and the visual impact of the coin when viewed as a whole. And in rare circumstances, where all these elements align in a way that appeals strongly to competitive buyers, the final hammer price can reach extraordinary levels, such as the reported $842,000 figure, which reflects not only the coin itself, but also the intensity of demand and the unpredictable nature of collectible coin auctions, where emotional bidding and rarity perception often play just as important a role as technical grading, making the 1972 Kennedy half-dollar with a prominent rim error and circulated dusty, very fine condition a fascinating example of how even worn and imperfect currency can transform into a highly valuable artifact within the numismatic world. Next coin, the 1973 United States Kennedy half-dollar with D-Mint mark, stands as one of the most intriguing coins among modern American collectors, especially when an unusual combination of circulation history, surface damage, and strong visual character comes together in a single specimen that still manages to attract extraordinary attention in the high-end auction market, where rare and unusual pieces sometimes reach astonishing valuations, reported around $793,000 in exceptional bidding environments driven by collector competition and rarity perception. And this particular coin is described as circulated, meaning it has clearly been used in everyday transactions over time, carrying with it the natural effects of handling that include scratches across the surface, small abrasions from contact with other coins, and general wear that gradually softens the original sharp details of the design. Yet despite these imperfections, the coin still retains enough structural definition to be classified in a dusty, very fine condition category, where most major design elements remain visible but are clearly aged and muted by time and use. And when observing the obverse side featuring President John F. Kennedy, one would typically notice scar-face wear and tear, which refers to visible smoothing and flattening across the facial area, including the cheek, jawline, and hair above the ear, giving the portrait a worn appearance that reflects decades of circulation and handling, while still preserving enough outline detail for identification and grading purposes. And this worn aesthetic, combined with a slightly dusty surface tone caused by long-term environmental exposure and storage conditions, creates a coin that may not appear visually perfect at first glance, but carries a deep sense of history that often appeals to collectors who appreciate originality and authenticity in circulated currency. And the presence of the D Mint mark indicates that the coin was produced at the Denver Mint facility, which is responsible for a significant portion of Kennedy half-dollar production during the early 1970s. And while mint marks themselves are often a point of study for collectors, in this case, the focus is more on the overall condition and unique visual characteristics rather than mint origin alone, as the true value driver lies in the combination of circulation wear, unusual surface condition, and collector demand for rare presentation pieces. And in the competitive auction environment, coins like this can experience dramatic price escalation when multiple bidders recognize the rarity of a well-preserved yet heavily circulated example that still maintains strong eye appeal despite scratches, softened edges, and general surface wear. And the dusty, very fine classification suggests that while the coin has lost its original mint luster, it still retains enough detail in the lettering and design features such as the inscriptions of Liberty and In God We Trust, along with the presidential profile, to remain visually identifiable and historically significant. And in many cases, collectors are drawn to such coins not because they are flawless, but because they represent real-world usage and survival over decades, making them more relatable and historically grounded than pristine uncirculated specimens. And the scratches present on the surface often tell their own story of movement through pockets, cash registers, and storage containers, each mark contributing to the narrative of the coin's journey through time. While the combination of wear and dusty toning can sometimes produce a muted, aged appearance that certain collectors find aesthetically appealing, especially when the coin still maintains strong structural integrity without major damage such as bending or severe corrosion. And when auction houses evaluate such a piece, they consider not only the physical condition, but also rarity factors, collector demand trends, and the psychological appeal of owning a unique circulated example with unusual character. And in rare market scenarios where competition intensifies among specialized Kennedy half-dollar collectors or era and condition rarity enthusiasts, the final price can escalate far beyond typical expectations, reaching reported figures like $793,000 when perceived scarcity and bidding pressure align, making this 1973 Kennedy half-dollar with D Mint mark and heavily circulated yet visually distinctive condition a remarkable example of how even worn and imperfect coins can transform into highly valuable assets within the modern numismatic market, where history, condition, and collector passion intersect to create extraordinary outcomes. In the lettering and design features such as the inscriptions of Liberty and In God We Trust, along with the presidential profile, to remain visually identifiable and historically significant. And in many cases, collectors are drawn to such coins not because they are flawless, but because they represent real-world usage and survival over decades, making them more relatable and historically grounded than pristine uncirculated specimens. And the scratches present on the surface often tell their own story of movement through pockets, cash registers, and storage containers, each mark contributing to the narrative of the coin's journey through actions of liberty and in God we trust, along with the presidential profile to remain visually identifiable and historically significant. And in many cases, collectors are drawn to such coins not because they are flawless, but because they represent real-world usage and survival over decades, making them more relatable and historically grounded than pristine uncirculated specimens, and the scratches present on the surface often tell their own story of movement through pockets, cash registers, and storage containers, each mark contributing to the narrative of the coin's journey through time. While the combination of wear and dusty toning can sometimes produce a muted, aged appearance that certain collectors find aesthetically appealing, especially when the coin still maintains strong structural integrity without major damage such as bending or severe corrosion. And when auction houses evaluate such a piece, they consider not only the physical condition, but also rarity factors, collector demand trends, and the psychological appeal of owning a unique circulated example with unusual character. And in rare market scenarios where competition intensifies among specialized Kennedy half-dollar collectors or era and condition rarity enthusiasts, the final price can escalate far beyond typical expectations, reaching reported figures like $793,000 when perceived scarcity and bidding pressure align, making this 1,973 Kennedy half-dollar with D mint mark and heavily circulated yet visually distinctive condition a remarkable example of how even worn and imperfect coins can transform into highly valuable assets within the modern numismatic market, where history, condition, and collector passion intersect to create extraordinary outcomes. Thanks for watching. Stay connected for more amazing coin discoveries. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for upcoming valuable videos. See you in the next one.